You would think that we would have longer readings for today. We are celebrating the fundamental mystery of our Christian faith, the Holy Eucharist, the sacrament in which Christ literally gives us his body and blood, the sacrament that contains everything Jesus did, the sacrament that contains his whole ministry, the sacrament that contains his whole passion and death, the sacrament that contains his whole resurrection. So you would think that we would have a big, long, complicated set of readings, but we don't. We just have a short part about Melchizedek from the book of Genesis, a short part from St. Paul recounting the Last Supper, and then a quick and familiar scene from the ministry of Jesus of the feeding of the 5,000. But this simplicity actually makes sense. The mystery of God himself is infinitely rich and deep, so the mysteries of his sacraments are infinitely rich and deep. But God is also fundamentally simple. God is. And so his mysteries are also fundamentally simple. And so his sacraments are also fundamentally simple. The Eucharist is God. The story of Abraham and Melchizedek is a prefiguration of Jesus and the Eucharist. It points toward who Jesus is and what he will do later. The same is true for his feeding of the 5,000. Jesus is directly involved in that story, but it's still pointing towards what he will do in the future. The even greater miracle of what he will do at the Last Supper. Melchizedek, king of Salem, which means king of peace, and who is described as priest of God Most High. Those both sound like titles of Jesus, don't they? King of peace and God Most High, priest of God Most High. Melchizedek offers bread and wine, pay attention, bread and wine just like we offer at Mass, and gives blessing and honor to God. Melchizedek is a figure and image of Christ, a small glimpse, even in the book of Genesis, of what Jesus is going to do later. That's why we sing of Melchizedek in the psalm, but we're singing it in reference to Jesus, who is in the line of Melchizedek, that is, priest of God Most High. In the gospel, Jesus is in a deserted place, and the people need to be sustained. And Jesus takes something very simple and plain, a small amount of bread and fish, basic food of the poor, and makes a miraculous multiplication. Often we pass over how incredible it really is. It says he fed 5,000 men, but it wouldn't have just been men that were there, and it also means those who were there with him. So Jesus fed maybe 8,000 to 10,000 people, maybe even 15,000 to 20,000 people, from 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. He started with an amount of food that would feed maybe 15 people, maybe 20, and multiplied it over 1,000 times. But it isn't about the food itself. Yes, Jesus did care about them being hungry in that moment, but Jesus wasn't there as just a perpetual food pantry for their material hunger only. Jesus was showing them that he is one who provides super abundantly. He doesn't just do a little good, he does massively, overwhelmingly good things. He takes things that seem unimportant, like bread and wine, things common and unspecial, and makes them incredible and infinitely valuable. And he does it to care for us, more than for just our bodies, but for our souls. We are in the deserted place of this world, the place that is so often lacking God, and he gives us a divine meal that goes infinitely beyond mere calories, that makes God present in this deserted world. St. Paul tells it plainly how Jesus said at the Last Supper that it is his body and blood. As incredible as the feeding of the 5,000 was, it was still just regular food. But here Jesus does something infinitely more special. He gives his true self. Human beings are given, literally, God to eat. Take, eat, this is my body, this is my blood. If just a human said this, we would call the police, because it would mean they were injuring themselves. But Jesus, while being fully human, is also fully divine. Therefore, when God gives us his flesh and blood, it is not the same as if you or I were to try and do so. At the Last Supper, Jesus institutes the Eucharist, the divine meal that we celebrate at every Mass. Every Mass is the Last Supper. Jesus is showing and giving himself to us, not just in a spiritualized or a philosophical way. No, he literally gives us himself to consume. Not a symbol, not an idea, but a reality. By giving us his true self, God feeds us and sustains us through this desert of the pains and sorrows of life. Notice how the people in the gospel were all satisfied. The Eucharist satisfies our greatest possible spiritual desires. How? Because it literally is God that we are receiving. And we can be sure of that for the best reason possible. We can be sure that it is Jesus because Jesus said that it is. It is what the church has believed from the very beginning. Every Christian everywhere until the Reformation believed and understood that the Eucharist to be exactly what the Catholic Church professes it to be, because what the apostles and all Christians knew it to be, and St. Paul is a witness. Jesus said, "Take, eat, this is my body, this is my blood." Jesus doesn't lie. This great understanding of what the Eucharist is, but needs to move just beyond something intellectual, something that has real effect in our lives. If Jesus is really present there, which he is, that has to affect us. We can't receive that and remain neutral to it. We have to respond. If we don't respond, it means we don't really understand. But maybe we struggle for how to respond. Well, as in most things, as in really everything, the way that we treat it, the way we respond to it, involves our bodies, involves the way that we dress and move and stand and act and behave. And so I'll take a moment to talk about the ways that we can respond to the presence of the Eucharist. Not because Father said you have to do these things, but because it will help us to engage with the mystery and so receive grace from it. First thing is simply Sunday Mass attendance. I beat this drum all the time, but it's so important. If Jesus is really here at Mass, which he is, why would you be anywhere else? There is nowhere else you could possibly be that is more important than at Mass. I will fight you on that. Like people say, oh, I'm busy, I got this. Like, no. Jesus is there. Not philosophically, not sort of, ideologically. No, Jesus is literally there, available to you at Mass, especially on Sundays. Why would you be anywhere else? Now, maybe you have other things to do, like but you can spare an hour and a half. Nothing you are doing is more important than that. Now, maybe there's some medical condition, maybe there's some particular emergency. Okay, fine. But in every other case that's not an emergency, nowhere else is more important to be than at Mass, present to the Lord, so that he can be present to you. Again, in charity, in love, for your own good, I will fight you on that. Nothing else is more important. Please, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, find time for Mass on Sunday. When you come to Mass, before you even get there, in fact, as you're at home planning to go to Mass, wherever you're coming from, how are you going to dress? How are you going to be when you get there? How we dress for something tells us, or tells the situation how well we are prepared for it, right? There's lots of things that we dress up for because they're important events. Nothing, again, could be more important than coming to be present to and to receive the Lord. When you're looking at your closet on Sunday morning or Saturday evening, thinking about what you're going to wear to Mass, remember that. You're going to meet and see and receive Jesus. Dress accordingly. Now, I'm not going to put a dress code out there, and I'm not going to be at the door saying make sure you have to have a 3-piece suit every Sunday, because it's summertime in Oklahoma, and that's not practical. But let's say it this way. You can't overdress for Jesus. It's not possible for you to dress up too much for the Lord. So I'm not going to give a hard and fast policy, but whenever you come to Mass, whenever you're coming to Mass, preparing to come, think about how you're going to dress. Probably a t-shirt and shorts is not the best thing, right? You can do better than that. There are better options there that you can show how much you care about the scenario, because that's why I wear my cassock on Sundays and other occasions too, because it reminds me that I'm here to do something important, something spiritual particular. I'm here to serve the Lord, so I dress up appropriately for that scenario. And here's the thing, not just because Father Kelly said so, but when we dress up for Mass, it helps us to pray better. If you dress up, you will have a better experience of prayer at Mass. You will just naturally, by being better dressed, comport yourself in a more spiritual and receptive way to the Lord. That's just how we work as human beings. A sidebar on how to dress, or a suggestion for dress, rather, is for the ladies. The chapel veil is the thing that is seen perhaps more and more. And maybe you've thought about it. Some people have it as like kind of a flashpoint. They see it as like a symbol of the patriarchy. It's not. I mean, like anything, it could be misused and maybe has been misappropriated in the past. But the symbol is a piece of attire where in a woman shows reverence before God. Now, there's lots of theology behind it I'm not an expert in, but that's the basics of it, is that she would wear a veil, not because she's unworthy, but in fact she's so worthy, so she is presenting herself worthily before God. So ladies, don't be afraid. No one has to wear one, but also it's a beautiful symbol of reverence before Christ, especially in the Eucharist. So be not afraid. When we come forward to receive communion, how do we come forward to receive? In the American church, we stand or we kneel, we receive on our tongue or on our hand. All those options are fine, and the combinations thereof. But do so reverently and well. Again, you are preparing to receive God, so make sure you're ready. When you come forward, make sure your heart and mind is recollected. Don't be thinking of random stuff. Prepare yourself. If you have any sins that you need to be reconciled, maybe if you have mortal sin, if you haven't been to Mass on Sundays, abstain from communion, please, until you go to confession. But come forward in a proper state of mind, well prepared to receive. If you're going to receive on the hand, that's fine. Make sure your hands are out and flat and ready and well prepared. So people kind of just like flop their hands like they're being asked to pick up a piece of trash or hold a piece of trash. Like, come on. You're receiving the Eucharist. You're receiving God in your hand. Prepare a good place for him. Like, receive him worthily. This is the most important person your hands will ever touch. Prepare accordingly. You know, if you're being handed a baby, you would be very careful and reverent and make sure your hands were clean and prepared. Well, Jesus was a baby. Think of it that way. If you're being handed baby Jesus, how would you be ready to hold him? Bring your hands out like that. Be ready to well receive the Lord. We don't want to drop Jesus. People have like kind of clumsy hands. No. Hold your hands in a way so as to receive the Lord the best way possible. If you're going to receive on the tongue, also fine. I would recommend. But make sure your tongue is out so the priest can put the host on your tongue well. Don't make us play a little game by having a little slot of your mouth open. Like, make it obvious, make it work. Like, be reasonable about it. Because again, we don't want to drop Jesus. We want to be reverent and receive him joyfully and properly. It's so important to take seriously these things. And again, I give these recommendations for how to comport ourselves, not because I said so, because I want to have control of it. But whenever we do this, it helps us pray. Whenever we dress properly for Mass, whenever we come to Mass in the right disposition, whenever we receive the Eucharist in a worthy and the most reverent manner that we can, it helps us be open to the graces God is trying to give. And we will go away from that liturgy having had a better, more fruitful spiritual experience. That's why I emphasize these things. I mean, it should be the natural response. If God is there, we should respond to him, and it will be good for our eternal life to give God the worship and honor and glory that he ought to have. Right? That's the first thing. But secondly, it will do us good. It will do us good in our own interior disposition, in our own prayer life, to honor God well, to orient ourselves so as to be well prepared to receive and to encounter him. It will benefit our own spiritual life to do so and help us engage with this great mystery of the Eucharist. Jesus gave us his true body. He gives us his true body and blood at every Mass reserved in the tabernacle of every Catholic church. There is no gift more valuable than that this side of heaven. And we would be fools to stay away from it. We would be fools to take it unseriously. It is a profound and miraculous gift beyond anything else. But it's what the church has professed from the very beginning. It's what the apostles understood. St. Paul talks about the Eucharist, talks about the Last Supper there in his reading. He's one of the earliest writers of the New Testament. And there it is. St. Paul believed the Eucharist. The apostles believed the Eucharist. The early church believed the Eucharist. Everyone believed the Eucharist for over 1,000 years until the Reformation happened, and it was discarded by some to their loss. Jesus said, "Take, eat. This is my body. This is my blood." Jesus doesn't lie. Let us be joyful to come before him in humility and receive the great gift of the Eucharist, which he desires to give.